On va continuer. D'abord, j'espère que vous avez apprécié votre déjeuner. Et bon. Donc, on va continuer avec le panel de l'après-midi où nous aurons nos 4 intervenants qui vont prendre part, vont s'installer ici. Et donc, le panel traite de l'évolution des technologies du call center.
On aimerait bien avoir cette session un peu interactive comme on avait the previous one. So I'm going to ask some questions just to kind of get it started here, but I would love to get your opinion, point of view, because it will help us actually, at least when we talk about our experience, we'll be able to connect it to the state of where Algeria is today. So, so I'm just going to ask the panelists to kind of quickly just, I think Anwar, you already did a good introduction earlier, but you can just quickly just do a little bit about yourself, and then I think Jared and Lisa, you didn't do a little bit, you can go a little bit about your background and expertise earlier, that would be good.
So just share with you my background a little bit more. I am a computer scientist. Like I said, I studied in Algeria, and then I also got a master's degree in the US from in industrial engineering, operational research and optimization. I work in consulting in the IT industry in general, mostly in development, but then kind of evolved from development to business analysis and project management projects. Different industries, from aerospace industry, energy trading, and some e-learning, so different. Also in terms of systems, I did custom development software, large-scale development software, and also commercial software implementations, right? So big, heavy implementations like SAP or energy software like OpenLink Indoor, which is one of the leading softwares in this industry. Like I said, large-scale softwares, teams of up to actually 800 people, the biggest project I worked on. Offshore, onshore, so a lot of challenges there in terms of how we go about managing large teams, but also a lot of involvement in terms of understanding architectures, a lot of technical components to take. So anyway, just kind of quickly in a nutshell, that's kind of my background. And lately, over the last probably 6 months, I've been involved a lot in the call center industry, kind of understanding systems involved, and trying to actually articulate the vision for a call center and how, kind of what's the vision and how do we go about taking it to actually the next step and actually even going even further as to where it should be, let's say, 5, 10 years from now.
So again, my name is Jared Couture. I'm the president and founder of Edge Webware. I started in development originally, sort of by accident in about 1996, and went from there, taught myself programming. Back then it was classic ASP, eventually went into ASP.NET. During that time, went back to school. Originally went to University of Cincinnati for counseling psychology, and then eventually shifted my major a little bit and went into human factors psychology, which essentially is usability. There's a lot more that goes into into it that I'll get into one of my other talks. But the main thing that I do today is on the usability side. So trying to make systems more intuitive, easier to use, and especially when you're working with complex systems, how they're laid out and designed. You know, there are certain things that are best practices and so forth that we deal with, but there's also a lot of complex issues that you deal with on the usability side that, from a psychological perspective, we try to take into account. Don't really do any development that much anymore. Mostly manage my teams. And we get into anything from a normal kind of standard website for a corporation to complex web applications and mobile apps. Do a lot of e-commerce and things like that as well. But probably about it.
So you've already met me once. My name is Lisa Couture. I lead sales, marketing, and operations for Edgeware. My background is in call centers, so I spent 21 years in the call center space. Actually started entry level, and I was in several different roles on the service side, and then moved over to the sales side and worked my way up. When I left MetLife, I was running half of the sales call centers for the MetLife franchise. I've been with Edge for about a year and a half, and really what we do is partner with companies and help them with challenges that they're facing. Sometimes that presents as consulting, and most of the time it's a mixture of consulting and helping our clients come up with solutions through software. And my background education-wise is in education. So a lot of what I did in the call center was people-related, and really enjoy the people side of the call center space.
Thank you. Just a little bit about myself. I started my journey here in Algeria in physics. I had a degree here, and then I went to the United States and actually switched my major altogether from physics to business. And I get into the banking industry on the analytics side, where I was building risk models for banks. And then that was my first part of my career. And then the latter part of my career, actually, I stumbled into the call center business. So I, with MetLife and Chase, and also a utility company, I worked managing large call centers all over the world. So I usually had about 2,000 or 3,000 employees in 3-4 continents, and just kind of challenging to keep all the balls in the air and making sure that you're getting the right experience at the right cost in the right channel. That was kind of my main goal as I worked through that journey. Very interesting field if you're just starting to be in it. It's a good training ground in management. Anybody that can lead a call center can lead any organization. So it's very interesting. We were just talking about it around lunch with another company. You hear all the stories in the world that you never heard, you hear them in a call center. So, but today we're talking about technology. So in call centers, there is the term people, process, and technology. So my question just to kind of get it started, is from a technology perspective, what kind of role do you think technology is playing today in a call center, or how has it played? So can we get it started from a U.S. perspective as well?
So I'll take a stab at this. Technology, I mean, one thing, probably a bit unconventional the way I'm going to say it first, is people involved in technology tend to be very passionate about what they do. And a lot of time, you end up losing the focus, right? that actually you focus more on the technology side as opposed to what you're there to do, right? So the first thing to understand is that technology is a tool and it's not an end. It's a tool basically to help you better run your business more efficiently and also to help you gather data to better run the business, right? But there's, I think, also another aspect to technology, because technology, like we said earlier, I think Lisa kind of mentioned it earlier, is an ever-evolving industry, right? It keeps improving at a very, very rapid pace, right? And actually, because of that, it becomes also a transformational tool, right, for many industries. And the call center is one of them. So because technology allows you to do more, right? For example, right, new channels of communications, chats, social media, all that kind of came from technology, right? Technology kind of enabled those channels. And that obviously affects how you start running your business, whether it's in call center or any other type of industry. That's kind of my vision of the world of technology within the call center business.
Well, I think, completely agree with you on that. The way that I see technology in any segment of business, but in particular in call centers, is a way to improve efficiency. And particularly in the call center, you need soft people skills to deal with the customers who call in. So if you are doing things that a computer can do, oftentimes better than we can do, faster and things like that, less error prone, then it makes sense to take something, take a piece of technology and solve that so that you free your people up then to deal with the people side of the business. That's a lot of people, I think, look at technology as almost kind of a scary thing, like, now we're going to get rid of all of our staff or whatever. And instead, what it should do is actually help you to use your people in a way that is more suitable for people. So we're not robots or software, really. When we talk about robots, it's really software. Obviously, it's not hardware robots. They are built in a way that can allow them to do things a lot more efficient than what we do it. So, but when you're talking to somebody who's angry or upset or confused or whatever, those aren't things that robots are really good at doing. So, yeah, right. Yeah, but even when they get a lot more advanced, I think there's still, people-to-people communication is something that is going to be extremely difficult, and there's still a lot of work there to be done before we get anywhere near that. So that's how I see it.
Is that working? I'm going to speak more from I'm sitting next to two technology guys, so I'm going to speak more from a business standpoint. And I'll just speak to really 2 points. I see technology as something that can set you apart. If you are a company that is really looking to strategically set yourself apart from a competition standpoint, technology can help you with that. Depending on your industry, there's all different types of tools that you can use. The other thing that I would say is continual improvement. Really looking at your business through the eye of how can you be more effective and more efficient. And I think technology, a lot of times, is the solution with that. So if you build a culture, and I'll be talking about this later in one of the talks that I'm going to be doing, but if you're constantly looking at ways to solve problems, enhance the customer experience and your employees' experience, then technology will come into play a lot of times.
Thank you all for that good introduction on technology. And so the other thing I think, Anwar, you mentioned is that technology is evolving at high speed these days. And also customer expectations in the US keep actually setting a higher and higher bars. An example I can give is Amazon. Think about Amazon, how they change the customer experience from ordering the product or something that you need to the fulfillment all the way to actually returning the product. So they changed the whole model in the US, and now every other companies, they have to deal with that. So they set the bar, or if you think about Apple, how they set the bar, and now other industries are actually victims of that new customer expectations. And you find companies that are not even in a competitive space, you find them that their customers are saying, wait a minute, I just talked to Amazon and they could do it. Why you cannot do it? You're a bank. Or you're a utility company. Why can't you do it? Because now the customers are expecting it. So my question to you guys, in your point of view, how is technology impacting customer expectations and customers from that perspective? If you can kind of give some comment to that.
So I mean, you mentioned the Amazon example, right? And that has to do with the development of a culture of instant gratification. Basically, people have lost the culture of being patient, right? And need, an immediate response, right? I mean, Amazon in the United States can actually, in some areas, can deliver products within an hour. I mean, you put an order within an hour, it's at your door. So you can imagine now if the customer calls a call center and you cannot resolve his call within the first call, I've experienced it, I've done it myself, people get upset, right? People get upset, and the worst thing that can happen is you can lose them as a customer, right? You lose customers, you lose your business. Now, like I said right earlier, do they keep track of my data? Do they not? I mean, do they know that I called? Sometimes I even wonder, right? I mean, what's happening? I think with the evolution of technology, especially within the omni-channel call center, contact center, I think that's where everything is probably going towards, right? Into one fully integrated system, likely a cloud-based system, right? I mean, basically, if I contact a call center or a company, right, and I contact them either through the phone, through chat, through emails, right, I expect them on the other side, when they put up my account, they can see all my interactions, right, in one. I don't expect them to see my chat interaction in one system, and then my phone interaction in another one, and so on. And the only way to do that is by developing these fully integrated cloud-based systems, right, where basically the calls are tracked, the chats are tracked, the emails, the tickets, anything that happens. And I think that's the best way to try to help from a technology perspective. Now, granted, it's still a human experience, like you said, right? So there's still a very, when you go to Amazon, you're not dealing with any person. I mean, you go to a website, and it's on your app, you're ordering stuff, and then it shows up at your door. You didn't deal with anyone unless there's a problem. Call center, you're typically dealing with people, so there will always be a human aspect to it. And I think at this point, at least for the short to mid-term, what technology can do is help humans better interact to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, first of all, the different technologies that your customers interact with are, call centers can't really see those as being optional. So when you have customers who call in and, or who want to contact you, and they go to your competitor, they go to a competitor product or whatever, and they have a Twitter account that gives them support, and they have a Facebook account, and they have a number to call in, and they have email, and they have a website that has a knowledge base, and they may have a forum or whatever else, and then they come to you, and if you are not offering them similar channels to contact you, because we all have our own preferences. Some people love Twitter, some people can't stand it. Some people love, calling, and some people, the last thing they want to do is pick up a phone call. So it's it's only a matter of time before you have to pick up all of those different channels, or the ones that are least appropriate for your particular business. So one thing is, people expect it, and if you don't have it, it's going to be a detriment. And then the second thing that I wanted to mention, and I'll get into this in one of my next talks on the web and social media's impact, but you have to be consistent across your channels. And this is where, Anwar, when you're talking about all these different systems working together, I mean, I know personally I've had so many instances where I call a company and I want to get some kind of information about whatever, and they just transfer me to somebody else, and that person in a call center doesn't even know what I just said to the other person, so I have to repeat it all over again. So it's going to be the same way if I email somebody, and then for whatever reason later I have to call in, and I'm going to expect them to know what I just emailed and somebody else may have gotten, or gone through Twitter, or Facebook, or wherever else. When we talk about Amazon, and I buy computer hardware all the time for our company, and so I get on Newegg on a fairly regular basis. And when you get on there and you have all of these reviews that are in there, you have customer service that has to happen even that way, because if you're not monitoring those kinds of things, then all that it's not going to not happen because you're not monitoring it. So one of the things that we pay attention to a lot with our clients is if you're a company who has reviews, those are going to happen whether you like it or not. And because we have some clients who will say, well, I don't want to mess with that, I don't want to get into that. But what they're not realizing is those reviews are going to be there no matter what. So we then encourage them, have somebody go out there and interact with those people on the web to show them that you are paying attention. If there are issues where they have to return something, they got a bad product or whatever it is, the reviews where I see negative and a company responding, negative, a company responding, hopefully they're not all negative because then I would just buy something else, but the ones where the company is responding, those are the ones where I say, okay, I can trust this company because they stand behind their products. So all of those different channels, consistency across all of those different channels is huge on the contact center.
I think I'm just, to highlight this, I'm going to give you an example that basically happened to me. My car broke down, right? And I took it to the mechanic, right? It just happened, very quickly, right? So the first thing I do, I need another car, because, obviously where I live, if you don't have a car, there's no other way to commute. So basically, I went online, right, to a rental company, car rental company, Enterprise, and I booked a car, right, within an hour. So I showed up, and then I called Uber, got on the car, and they took me to the rental branch. And I got there, and sure enough, there was no car, right? So now, going back to, I'm at the branch, and they have to deal with an angry customer because, and they're telling me that basically they cannot guarantee unless you put, unless you reserve a car 24 hours in advance, there's no guarantee that there will be a car for you at the branch. Of course, I'm not happy because I spent my $5, so I have to spend money. I spent money on Uber, now I'm at the branch and they don't have a car. Anyway, I had to go figure out what to do. So now I'm back to in a branch, doing an interaction. There's an interaction happening. Of course, that's not being tracked anywhere. So there's a piece of information there that's missed, right? Of course, they know that I tried to rent a car. So next thing I do, I'm so frustrated. So the first thing I do, I go on Twitter, I hashtag Enterprise, and I just, put some really bad comments. But guess what? Within an hour, I got a reply from Enterprise asking me, and of course they're also broadcasting it so people can see the response. Basically asking me right there on the spot within an hour, telling me, hey, We will fix your problem, we're here for you, blah, 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 just contact us directly and we will take care of you. And sure enough, I contacted them and I figured, I didn't get it immediately, I had to wait a couple more hours, but they figured a way to get me a car from another branch, right? So that's a prime example of using kind of different channels, to interact. Obviously, I used the website to book a car, I went to the branch, I interacted with someone who couldn't do much, which I understand, but my argument with him was, if you let me book it, it should be here. Right? And then finally, having a Twitter interaction, which actually I didn't expect much out of it, but people actually were watching and they have actually argued with people, from what I understand, or just watching all these tweets because of people going back to the new channels of communication. People used to be just frustrated and they could vent within a small group, but with social media now you can vent it to the whole world. And the simple use of a hashtag basically did the trick for me.
And I would add to that, there's a saying that says, once tweeted, never deleted. So once it's out there, you can't get it back. You can't do anything about that. So if you can't prevent him from tweeting something, then the best thing you can do then is then respond to it. Have somebody there who is ready and willing and able to help that customer in that situation.
So Lisa, before you give us your point of view, I just want to kind of talk about what you just said, Anwar. During the breaks, one of the attendees asked me, hey, from a customer profitability, what would you do from getting new customers, cross-selling or upselling your current customers, or trying to get back customers that actually left the company? So in my experience, getting back customers that left the company has a very low response rate or take rate. But so I told him, focus on your current customers, make sure you take care of them, then go after new customers. But for the ones that left you, don't let them leave. Get them at this moment of leaving and give them something of value. It's like a recovery. That's what the enterprise did with you. Is like you went and vented, and they came in during that moment and gave you something of value to gain you back. But if that's gone for a couple of days, or then you would have gone to somewhere else, and probably you will never rent from enterprise rent a car. So.
Actually, I just remember, I had actually a follow-up to this one. Right? Actually, I think 6 or 7 months later, I was in a similar situation where I needed to rent a car within an hour. So I went ahead and basically went online and did my reservation. Well, guess what? Within 5 minutes, I got a call from the branch telling me that there was no car available. So don't bother. At least,
they improve their process.
They improve their process somehow, but
the customer expectations are changing and changing in the U.S. So I would love to hear from the audience at one point, how can you parallel what's happening in Algeria versus what we're seeing here? I would love to hear from you after Lisa kind of give us her point of view on this question.
So I usually am going to have a little bit of a different take or a little bit of a different view. I think technology has impacted the way we hire. When you're looking at someone's skill set, their flexibility, their ability to change, clearly there's some advantages if they have some experience with technology, but in my experience, you hire more for character and chemistry with the company, and you can teach them the technology piece. But having to bring someone in, I think you have, from my point of view, I would look more for someone who can adapt to change and is willing to learn. So I feel like that's probably been one of the biggest impacts. And the other, you both touched on, but I would just say, from a social media perspective, if you don't have documented procedures for your associates, you should, because you don't want them to just do whatever they think, because it may not be what you want them to do. You may not want them to respond at all. So I would just encourage from that point of view that when you're putting your strategy together around technology, and I agree with everything that's been said, to make sure that you've got the right things in place so that you don't have to learn the hard way when it comes to those technologies.
So I'll pause for a minute. I have a few more questions that I can ask the panel, but I would love to see if you guys have some questions or just reactions to what we have or experiences that you can share with us in the Algerian market. Anybody interested?
So, hello back. I'm working in rental accommodation application in digital. So we have some clients who are not satisfied by our services. So what we are doing, so we give back their money, and also we offer a weekend for them. It's just a technique just to persuade to reuse our service and try it again, because they are being unsatisfied by one of our hosts, but not for all of them. So try to get them satisfied other way. That's it.
So let me ask you a question. How did the interaction with the customer happen? Was it like online? Was it a call? Do you know? How?
It's a reclamation service. So we have a number for that. If they have some trouble, they call us, and we try to figure out right
On the spot, in the first one.
exactly.
Anybody else want to jump in? I'm doing that. I'm working the...
Parce que dans les années 70, l'évolution de la technologie n'était pas à la même vitesse. Alors, pour les call centers qui ont plus de 200 ou 300 personnes qui travaillent à l'intérieur, comment vous vivez ce changement aussi rapide dans la technologie qui a pris une vitesse exponentielle? Je pense à la fameuse expérience. Par exemple, un client qui est content va parler autour de lui uniquement à un client, alors que quelqu'un qui n'est pas content, il va en parler à minimum 9 clients. Et donc ça, c'était avant les réseaux sociaux. Maintenant, sérieusement parlant, on ne peut pas connaître exactement le nombre de clients qui vont écouter le bad buzz, si on peut dire ça comme ça. Donc, comment vous allez vous armer pour faire face à ce genre de clients mécontents? Merci.
I think the key thing here is, like I said earlier, it's human interaction, right? So the first thing, which Lisa kind of mentioned just earlier, right, is recruiting the right person. I mean, and when I say the right person, it's the right person, I mean, there are different aspects, right, to the human behavior, right? There is the ability to do things and to learn things, right? So they have to have that ability, right? And you have to have also the attitude, right? And by attitude, I mean, you know, I think what I learned lately, right, in terms of, you know, how you handle a call, right? There's a lot of training happening, right? And what I keep hearing is, when you talk on the phone, make sure you have a smile on your face, right? Something very simple. But I guess subconsciously, if you have a smile on your face, I guess you are more relaxed and you'll handle that situation better, right? I'm not an expert in human behavior, but you know, that struck me when I heard it in a call center. Now in terms of technologies, yeah, sure, I mean, technologies are going to evolve and they keep evolving at a faster pace, right? So there is a lot of training that needs to happen on a continuous basis. That's for the agents, right? And I probably will get you to talk more about that, especially on the human behavior. Now on the technology side, I mean, you probably need an IT shop, right? And your IT shop needs also to keep up with technologies, right? I mean, we were discussing Lisa and Jared earlier, right? And in their company, basically, they allow time for their employees to actually learn stuff, right? I mean, they're a consulting firm, right? So basically, they need to make money off of the time of their employees. But they do allow them to spend, I mean, I don't know how much time, but they can talk more about that. But I've also been in like big enterprises. I mean, one of them was share trading, right? And what share trading does, they actually, they have like some specific positions, right? And they call them game changers, right? And all these people are doing are just looking at technologies, right? And how those technologies can impact their business, right? And these are like probably very skilled IT folks who understand different technologies, and they just say how emerging technologies and how they can bring those into in-house, right? That's one side. There's another thing which, what they also do is they actually, something similar to what you guys do, which is they, I know specifically a couple of guys at Share Trading that they give them 25% of their time can be spent on anything they want, with a budget, with a significant actually budget, right? So if there is a software they like, they go and buy it and they play with it, right? I think Google is also known for doing these kind of things, and kind of encouraging people to just go and figure out things. So those are ways to, so of course there is the operational aspect, which I don't know as much as you guys do, but you can talk about that. But there's also the technology aspect of it, which is we need to keep, I mean, just keep learning, right? And you, again, need to have the right skills, you need to have the right attitude to do it.
Yeah, I mean, keeping up with technology, I'm not sure anybody's able to, frankly. I mean, everybody is doing, even the people who are at the top of their field, they're at the top of their field. They're not at the top of every field. So you'll never keep up with all of it and changes. So, you know, I have a friend of mine who works at Procter & Gamble, huge company in the United States. Not sure if they're known over here or not, but his team, it's a small team. I think there are only about 3 or 4 people on his team, but they do exactly what Anwar was talking about, where they go out, they try new technology. He was talking to me the other day about Docker containers and how they can use them to manage a bunch of their different services and so forth, and to bring efficiencies and things like that into what they're doing on the system administration side of things, and deployments and a bunch of other things. But they have a budget for that. They have a small team that they dedicate to that, and this is one team in one area. So they have many different teams throughout the company that do these things. So if you have that kind of budget, even if it's only just one person who you can dedicate to a specific thing, and maybe that person or a couple of people who rotate off and on or whatever to try and stay up on those things. You know, when you're talking about dealing with how customers interact, if I understood correctly, how customers interact with you across different channels that aren't direct. So Anwar mentions enterprise on Twitter, right? He's not going to their actual account in private messaging them. He's just hashtagging them and doing that. You know, how do you manage that? So there are tools out there that you can use to get insight into that. You know, there are tricks that you can use for how you search to find things like that. Typically, you'll have, depending on the platform that you're using, you may have tools within the platform itself that track certain things like that. So Twitter has TweetDeck, and you can find, you know, you can research some things that way. But and I want to say companies like Newegg also has the same thing, where your manufacturers can get in there and do research directly on their own products. So there are ways to do that even across different platforms on the web that are non-standard, you know, that aren't even, that you don't have any control over whatsoever. But it can be tricky. And I think the biggest thing there, again, is some effort is better than no effort. So you're going to have misses. You can't expect to catch every single one of those, but the ones that you do catch, other people will see those, and that makes a big difference. Another thing we tell our clients with reviews and those things, going back to that, is a 5-star review actually looks bad. If you get every customer to give you a 5-star review, people think you're gaming the system, even if they're all legitimate, which they're probably not going to be anyway. But you're going to get negative reviews. Negative reviews aren't bad because they actually show that these are real people who are responding. So don't worry, you're going to have some misses, but make sure you're not missing everything.
Just another follow-up to actually what we both talked about, right? So in terms of technologies, right, and trying to be on the, not even the cutting edge, but they call it the bleeding edge, right? Basically, it's a US expression that means that you're way ahead of everyone. I worked on a project, this is an example, right? There's a warning that I'm trying to set here. I worked on a project where the reporting component of the project, this is in the trading world, data is very important, like everywhere else, but even more so in trading, right? Traders make money off of data, complex data, but that basically will drive their bottom line. So the reporting component, the game changers, these guys who look at all these technologies, right? And they decided on a solution. It was not to get too technical, but it's an SAP HANA solution, which is kind of an in-memory database, super fast, from a query perspective and so on, with a visualization tool called Tableau, which is kind of the hype of the moment. Those tools keep changing all the time, but right now it's happening. So they decided to go down that route, right? And the implementation of the project took almost 4 years. And at the end, with involving all the users and all the traders, and at the end, it didn't work. I'm not going to get into the technical details, but the traders didn't like it. It didn't perform as expected just because somebody missed in the process of all this in-memory, high speed, high performing. There was actually a small database that was not high performing, and that one was the bottleneck to the whole thing. I'm simplifying it a little bit, right? So they ended up redoing just that portion, the visualization and reporting portion of the project, with a budget of $25 million. That just gives you an example that, it's nice to try to implement new technologies and try to figure out, but there's also the flip side to that. You can actually go down, the wrong path. That's just sharing the experience.
So, is it? Oh, okay. I think one thing that, if I understood the question, I'm trying, because I was kind of walking around, but with all the speed of technology and how exponentially it's going, and how do we react to it as organizations, I think one thing that I can offer that I saw work was a really good program of change management within the company. I know usually it's short change, there are no budget for it, or no time for it. We don't spend a lot of time investing in it. It comes back actually to bite us at the end. And I saw when we spend a lot of time investing in change management and documenting our process and procedures, it's not the thing that anybody wants to do. In a company, it's kind of it's very hard, it's boring, but it actually saves a lot of companies. And now it's kind of called business resiliency. So I think that's one thing. It's not a bulletproof that is going to help you, but I would say if you're a startup, and I know you don't have a lot of time to do everything, it's something that you should have on your radar screen. And if you're an established company and you're not spending time reviewing your processes and procedures and thinking about change management and business resiliency, I think it's something that you should look into, because it will help at least help you keep up a little bit with the speed of change, or at least knowing that the change has come or is coming, and you need to do something about it versus finding out later that actually you missed the whole boat. So that's just my little 2 cents there.
I agree. If I can just add, I can't tell you how many times we've rolled out something. It ends up costing you more money by not doing the change management than if you had just done it to begin with. So just want to reiterate that I completely agree, and example after example where that's true. So I think sometimes it is difficult to wrap your head around how important change management is, but time and time again, it's save time and money by just doing it right the first time.
And one other thing I want to add on that is you don't need every piece of technology. You need the pieces of technology that are suitable for your particular company. So, and how you figure that out, I'll actually be talking about later today. So, or at least start going down that path. Because, I mean, it's almost dizzying how many different systems you can put in place. And they're not always appropriate. Even when you look at different social channels, you may have a user base that absolutely has nothing to do with Twitter or nothing to do with Facebook. And spending time on those then doesn't make any sense. So doing that initial research to figure out, okay, now I know who my customers are, this is how I need, this is where they are. These are the channels they're going to expect me to be on. Now what tools do I need to make sure that I can find the comments that they're leaving on there that may be negative or positive, because both are good, obviously, to get insights in from. So you're not going to use every piece of technology. Finding that the ones that actually line up with what you need is a key component.
Other questions from the audience? We have a question back there. And then we have one here. So start.
Hello everybody. I'm lecturer at university. Sometimes I teach marketing services, community manager. I have questions. Now some companies don't need call center. We can do it with smartphones, application, and these people who has smartphone can answer fixed problems with the application on their smartphone. Thank you.
My comments on there, I mean, there is obviously this trend of self-service, right? A lot of companies are trying to minimize their costs, and one way to minimize the cost is provide tools where they can, do things themselves, or even within communities, right? Ask the community for, post on a forum and get the answers without the intervention of the company. We have an example where we have a financial company, right, that we provide, call center services to. But there are some basic functions, right, that people would call this call center to say, I want to change my address, right? And, you would think that that's something simple enough that, they would have it, but they don't. They didn't have it on their app. You could not change the address, right? So we got a lot of calls, people just asking to change an address, and we get frustration from the users because that's one feature that they don't want an outsourcing call center to do. They want to do it in-house to their call center, right? But the calls are being routed to this outsourcing call. Well, so they realized that quickly, and that's one thing they did, which is they rolled out the functionality to change an address on their app, right? And that's obviously one way to minimize the calls and get people to actually do their own things on their phone.
I would just say that, and I'm speaking from experience because I've done this myself, is I think sometimes we may assume that we know what how the customer wants to interact with us. We may assume that everybody wants to use an app, And that may be true, but unless you have the data to back that up, I would just suggest that you have multiple ways to interact with you. I mentioned earlier that age, sometimes there's correlation to age on how certain age groups like to interact with companies. And that is based on fact, that's not just my opinion. So I would just say that I would just be cautious about having one channel because some of your customers may want to interact with you in different ways. And again, it goes back to the expectation piece. If you don't have that, then they're probably questioning why you don't. So that would just be my thoughts on that.
So follow up on that one, right? In terms of, this is more the sales aspect of things. I mean, by giving them self-service, I mean, would companies actually think about it twice? Because in terms of interaction with their customers, that's a loss, it's an opportunity lost, right? In terms of even just keeping up, or even in terms of upsell and cross-sell, does that actually factor into the decision of providing, you know, as much self-service as they can, or do you think, you know, they would actually adjust it?
So I would say it depends on the industry and what your data supports, because I could give you my opinion, but I do think it probably just depends. I think that no matter what channels you have in place, there should be an opportunity for you to try to engage them from a cross-sell or selling them something else. But you don't want to be an annoyance either. So there's a balance there between the technology that you're providing that can be a self-service type of thing, but at the same time, you're absolutely right. There are some cons to that because if you're not talking to the customer right then and there, when the opportunity presents itself, then you may lose out on that particular sale. So I guess my roundabout answer is it's a balance, and it should be based on the data that goes back to your industry and your company.
I'd add two things. So first of all, show my age a little bit. I grew up programming through the time when we had Flash. Some of you here remember working with Flash development. And there was a fairly significant, very bad period of time where Flash developers wanted to use Flash for everything, and it was horrible. And what I would caution against is apps can't solve everything. So there are certain things, technology needs to be used where it's appropriate. And we used to say this about Flash all the time. So people would want us to build a website in Flash. Horrible idea. You can build little components. This was before HTML5, even before the JavaScript libraries that we have now and so forth. So there was kind of, every once in a while, a legitimate use of Flash. So with apps, I'm not saying they're like Flash completely, but just to state that that's an example of make sure you use technology where it's appropriate. Apps won't solve every single problem. And then the other thing is I still think from a usability perspective that there is a tremendous amount of work that still needs to be done on mobile apps. I have, so my cell phone carrier is Verizon, one of the biggest ones, if not the biggest one in the United States. Their app is okay, I use it every once in a while, but if I want to do anything halfway serious within my account, I will go to their website. Sometimes I will actually still go to a store to do those things. So, and the reason I say that is, I mean, if you think about how old the internet is, right? So roughly, say, early 90s, when the public got access to it. So we've been able to develop on the internet for 24-ish years, somewhere around there. And you compare that to Apple. The first smartphones came out, Apple and Android in 2008, if I remember correctly. It's 10 years. We've had half the amount of time. Now, it's riding somewhat on the coattails of web development, obviously, but there's still a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done there. It's very difficult. You know, one of the quotes, I'm going to butcher the quote, but to paraphrase anyway, Steve Jobs is, to create something that is simple is actually extremely difficult. So when you have an app, you have a much smaller screen that you have to put a lot of information into. Getting the navigation right, you know, it's easy to put a really complex set of interactions in an app. It's very difficult to make that set of interactions simple enough so you go in, you just have to click a couple places and get your task done. Instead, a lot of times what you end up doing is, you know, if you're on a big screen, you can put all kinds of stuff on a great big screen in one screen. If you try and do that with an app, you know, the screen is this long, and it's just a pain to deal with, or you have 27 steps that you have to walk through. So that's why you have to use it in a way that's appropriate. And we build apps, so I'm not against apps. We're building them right now. So, but they do need to be used. You need to know when those limitations arise.
We have another question out here.
But what she is getting the microphone, I think one thing that we talk about in the US is really customer choice of channels. And you're right, I think from a business perspective, we'd love that everything is done self-service, whether it's an app or whatever the case be. But at the end of the day, it's the customer that chooses how they want to come to us. Whether they want to come to the store, whether they want to call. So that's why I think you need to have availability, and hopefully you can try to educate them and push them to that channel as much as you can, because that's the lowest cost review.
Est-ce que, s'il vous plaît, on privilégie une communication avec le client par appel ou en utilisant les réseaux sociaux et le chat?
Incoming call center calls or outgoing calls? Incoming calls.
Incoming.
So the preference, what's the preference? La question c'est quelle est la préférence pour le prévu de business?
Pour la société,
Pour la société.
Pour le business, exactement. Pour le business, est-ce qu'on doit privilégier une communication avec le client, c'est-à-dire en utilisant les appels, ou bien en utilisant les réseaux sociaux et le chat?
I'm going to say, give you some data and information that's in the US, and I'm sure we're going to have different opinions here, and that's okay. So to give you an idea, in the call center, yeah. Oh, the question, okay. So the question is, from a company's perspective, from a business, what would you give high priority to as of an incoming interaction? Would you want to do it more in the phone channel, the call center, or do you want to do it in the web or a digital channel? So which one? Okay, all right. So I'm going to answer it from a cost perspective. For example, just to give you a scale, in the cost per call in the United States, it's like $10. I'm using that as an example. $10 per call. If we take that call and do it in Latin America, it drops to like $7. If we take that call to the Philippines, like I said earlier, it's like $3. If it's done in the IVR, it's like 10 cents. If it's done in the web, it's like pennies, almost zero. So if you ask me as a business, I would rather do it in the web and in that channel, and I think to the point of the gentleman that asked earlier, that's what you favor. But exactly, thank you. But it's the the client experience and the customer experience. You have to add that as a layer to make sure, are you going to have a good interaction in the web, or is it going to be easier on the phone? So for me to answer this question, I would go back to the type of calls that we talked about earlier in CRM, and then you start saying, this one I can do here. So for example, we had a product in an insurance company where customers were on disability, so they were not working, and to go through their case to get approved, they had to get the doctor to fax information to the insurance company. So the customers would be calling 10 times a day. Did you get the fax? Did you get the fax? Did you get the fax? And then, no, let me check, right? That's one, it's an easy question, and you would love to just push it to that channel. Now, my claim has been declined, and I'm upset. Now, I would like to talk to this person right away and have them talk to the claim office, not even the call center. So that's for me. I don't know if I, so that's, you have to put those two together and the type of, questions.
So this question actually for you.
Question for me.
So, I mean, is there any way that you can have a model where you can actually put numbers on these, right? In terms of customer experience, right? I mean, you talked about cost, right? But can you also associate like not a cost, but a value to the interaction by type that can ultimately you want it to be very clear, right? I mean, it's like a score, and then based on that number, you can decide what. So do you do models like that?
Yes. Yes, you want to? Yeah. So yeah, we do models like that. One is really the customer satisfaction score. You're asking your customers, and they give you feedback. I was on a scale of 1 to 10 or 1 to 5, and that becomes a data point that you can have in scoring. The other is you overlay information with other data. I think somebody asked this morning, can you add more data, more information? So for example, in the case of disability product, we had from a happy customer calling about having a baby and they're excited, to, I'm going to be a little bit downer here, to terminal cancer. Someone that's dying and they're calling. So do you want that in? So we had like scoring on some of these, and we said if we know, now we know that the person has this illness, and we fast track them. No IVR. As soon as they're calling, there's no press 0, no press 1, no nothing. So we gave it a high score, a high value score that this, and it goes to actually a highly trained registered nurse. So they're almost talking to a doctor. So that's now it gets segmentation, and the segmentation is scoring. And I mean, I just use some examples, but you can get a lot of data and information and end up actually doing some routing and doing some scoring. So yes, it's and that's where you want to be, because then you have the value of the customer. I think we're going to talk about that. I don't know, maybe this afternoon actually. In one of the sessions we'll talk about type of transactions and actually customer value and how do you do it from a segmentation perspective.
I would just add, you can do testing. You had mentioned that earlier on another topic, but if you think based on the data that you have that this is something that can be done in a different channel, a less expensive channel, you can try it and survey the customers and see if indeed you were right. And if you weren't right, hopefully you fail fast and go back and try something else. But that would be my recommendation. You definitely want to make decisions based on data, but to Jared's earlier point, data is not 100%, and I've learned the hard way many a time that what I think is not necessarily what it is in the end. So being flexible and failing fast, all of those things will contribute to your success on that.
Yeah, fail fast and recover quickly.
Yes.
I mean, truly, that's an expression we use in the States.
And just to kind of highlight the data side of things. So as a web developer, and again, I'm not really writing code anymore, I'm overseeing projects and so forth, but when we work with designers, either our own team or because we work with outside designers as well, we'll frequently have designers come to us with issues that I will, from a usability perspective, I'll say, well, this is going to be problematic because of whatever. Could be a contrast issue, could be, you know, something where there's colorblind, people might not be able to read it because of colors that have worked out. There may be short-term memory issues going between screens and so forth. So all kinds of different issues we can deal with. And what the response that we'll get a lot of times from designers is, well, I can do that. And therefore, they just expect everybody else will be able to do it as well. And when you do research, you find where your own misconceptions and your own assumptions are actually wrong. So it is very important. And those assumptions aren't bad. It's good to start there. They're a really good place to start from. Because what they do, every scientific experiment starts with an assumption. And you develop your hypothesis from that, and then you test it. And you may fail. If you do it quickly, go back, retest, or do whatever you need to do and recover and move on from there. So having that data behind that is critical, because then it helps you to make more well-informed decisions.
Any other questions from the audience? I mean, I don't have any questions. I have extra questions just in case we didn't get interaction. Oh, one final one here, the last one. Yeah, I'll come by and it gives me an opportunity. Final question or comment.
One last question. So we were talking about data, collecting data here, and earlier, and there is a percentage of customers who want to stay anonymous. And does, with that, the numbers won't be wrong or no?
So there's certain data that you can collect that an anonymous person still will give you. So if they call in and they have a problem, you still know that they called. You still can identify what problem they had. You can still identify whether you were able to solve it or not. So there's several things you can collect that you can still report on. If you need specific information about them that they are refusing to give you, then that's going to be one of those points you just can't collect on. But I mean, even if that's 40%, you know, and I suspect it's probably not that high, but even if it would be something like 40% of your data, you still have 60% left that you can, you know, you can do some kind of analysis on and make some. Again, they're not going to be 100%, but you're going to have enough there. You're going to see, most likely, you're going to see trend lines, and you can follow those trend lines.
And I would just add, I think too, it depends on your business, and I think there are some things that you have to require that they give you, or you can't help them. And certainly, again, probably going to hear me say balance a lot during this conference. It's a balance, and you have to pick your battle. Is it worth making a customer upset to get the information? Is it critical to what they're asking about, or is it something that you can answer without the information? I think it just really depends on the situation. And then just to echo what Jared said, in my experience, it's very few people that want to remain anonymous. I don't know if you experience something different. So I think based on what I've experienced, it's probably less than 3%, which would not really impact the trend line.
I would also add one more thing. So we have a very large healthcare client who they changed their website at one point, and so in our state, in our state in Ohio, in the United States, healthcare can change by county. So the state is broken up into 80-something counties. So they're, how else to explain that? I'm not sure.
From wilaya to daira. So in wilaya, there are local dairas. In each daira, they have their own healthcare.
Yeah, so they can have their own options based on that. So what they did was, this was before we had interacted with them as a client, they required everybody who went to their website to put in their zip code. It's basically what identifies where in the state they are. Their bounce rate on their analytics, they're using Google Analytics, and their bounce rate went almost to 100. People would go to their website, they would see that, and they'd leave. It affected it that much. So they obviously stopped. It took them like a day, and they wiped it right off the website almost immediately.
Recovered fast.
Yes, they did recover very fast. So when we redesigned their website for them, they had horrible information architecture problems. It was just very poorly designed. One of the things that we went through and we iterated and reiterated over and over again was where to ask their customers for what pieces of data. Because as you go down that line farther and farther, you're able to ask more and more in-depth questions, and then it becomes, I literally can't help you now unless you give me your zip code or whatever else it is. And by that time, the customer there's two things. One, they understand, because now they get why, they understand why you have to ask them that. And two, they're so, they're kind of committed. Yeah, they're invested into that conversation now. They're almost, and it's not, you're not even purposely dangling this out there as like a carrot, as we call it, for like a treat for them to go and find. It's legitimately, you're taking them down that path. It's what you have to do. So that's not always the case, but that can be the case in certain situations.
Well, thank you guys. Very good interactive session again. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup pour le panel. Donc là, on va continuer avec 2 workshops. Donc il y avait 3 de prévus, mais on va faire 2. Un se déroulera ici et l'autre juste la salle à côté. D'accord? Donc celui qui se déroulera ici, c'est l'atelier B. Donc, dans le programme, vous allez trouver l'atelier B, Technologie du call center et application du système. D'accord? Donc c'est monsieur Couture qui va le faire ici et vous aurez la traduction. Le deuxième atelier, c'est explorer et exploiter les données de votre call center, se déroulera dans la salle juste à côté avec monsieur Hassan et d'accord? Donc oui, c'est au choix, bien sûr. Choisissez l'atelier qui vous intéresse le plus.
Donc c'est un peu ce que cette présentation va faire. Ensuite, on va vous présenter un peu quels sont les types de données qui sont importants pour un call center. Ça sera plutôt la spécialité de la vie, mais bon, j'introduirai ces concepts. Probablement vous connaissez la plupart d'entre eux. Et comment est-ce qu'on peut exploiter ces concepts et ces mesures de performance ou mesures de coût dans un call center, et comment est-ce qu'on peut améliorer les opérations d'un call center. Donc, le but encore, c'est de passer des données à une amélioration des opérations d'un call center. Donc c'est ce qu'on va parler. On va parler d'abord de la value chain. C'est comment est-ce qu'on récupère les données, comment est-ce qu'on les transforme et comment est-ce qu'on aboutit à des actions, à des décisions exécutives ou managériales. Donc on parlera comment est-ce qu'on va récupérer ces données, comment est-ce qu'on regarde les données. Le troisième point, c'est probablement le point le plus technique. On parlera un peu des systèmes, des différents systèmes qui existent dans un call center, que ce soit un modèle un peu archaïque versus un modèle un peu plus moderne dans le cloud center. Ensuite, on trouvera les KPIs qui sont des mesures de performance d'un call center. Et quel est l'objectif de ces KPI, dans un call center enfin, un point un peu c'est it's not everything. Ce qui est important à savoir, c'est dans un call center, il y a énormément de données. Vous avez et en fait, je voudrais que ce soit un peu plus interactif, donc si vous voulez. Donc il y a beaucoup de données. Comme on a parlé précédemment, il y a des données structurées et des données qui ne sont pas structurées. Les données structurées en général, c'est un peu plus facile d'un point de vue technique pour les organiser. les données non structurées, ça c'est un peu plus délicat. Et en fait, il y a beaucoup de recherches et beaucoup d'applications dans les pattern recognition, artificial intelligence, etc., machine learning, pour essayer d'analyser les données non structurées et essayer d'en tirer plus d'informations. Donc ça c'est le départ. Donc on commence avec des données, et à partir de ces données, on extrait de l'information. L'information dans un call center, c'est un peu les KPI. Donc, vous avez plein de données pour les appels, combien de temps on fait les appels, les ressources, qu'est-ce qui a travaillé sur les appels. Donc on tire des informations, comme le average handle. Un exemple, c'est average handle time. C'est le temps qu'on passe. Donc on considère les données qui nous mènent. Ensuite, on extrait l'information et puis on passe au insight. Donc maintenant, on commence à voir ces données et à essayer de comprendre ces données. En général, quand on regarde ces données, c'est ce qu'on appelle la donnée, la mesure de la donnée et puis l'objectif. Et c'est comme ça qu'on arrive à évaluer. J'ai un peu de difficultés pour exprimer en français. Et si je peux passer, comment?
On va vous aider à
pour passer de l'information à l'insight. L'insight, c'est commencer à voir et à interpréter l'information qu'on reçoit. Et enfin, le point le plus important ici, c'est les décisions. Qu'est-ce qu'on fait avec ces données? On peut avoir des décisions, on peut avoir des actions. On peut avoir des suggestions et on peut aussi ne rien faire. C'est aussi un des outcomes. Ce qu'il faut comprendre, c'est que on revient encore à la technologie et à la gestion des opérations d'un call center. La technologie n'est qu'un moyen pour améliorer les opérations. Donc, la technologie, les data et les données ne sont pas une fin en soi. Le but, c'est toujours d'améliorer les opérations de business. Donc, ce que je vais montrer ici, c'est juste un petit échantillon des différents systèmes qui existent dans un call center. Et je voudrais avoir un peu votre feedback sur quel genre de système vous avez si vous travaillez dans un call center, quel genre de système vous avez en place. Le premier, c'est le Customer Information System. On a deux types de call centers. On a des call centers qui sont des outsourcing call centers, qui ont plusieurs clients et qui vont fournir des services à différents clients qui vont sous-traiter. Et puis on a des call centers qui sont dans des entreprises qui sont uniquement pour les clients de l'entreprise, etc. Donc par exemple, si on prend pour une banque, c'est ce que vous avez. Donc c'est pour comment vous gérez les comptes de vos clients. Quelles sont les transactions, quelles sont les balances, ce genre de système, c'est spécifique aux entreprises. Pour un call center qui fait de la sous-traitance, c'est un des points les plus difficiles à gérer. Le point du training, le point des agents, etc. Le deuxième, c'est le système de téléphonie.
Uniquement téléphone.
Comment?
C'est-à-dire uniquement le téléphone sans solution liée au
sans solution, juste le système en lui-même, comment vous recevez les appels, comment ils sont, le routing des appels, etc., les ACDs,
solution classique.
Comment?
Classique.
Maintenant, ce que je voulais savoir, est-ce que vous avez en général des systèmes classiques, vous avez des systèmes cloud, est-ce que... Classique.
Non. Solution propre au système d'information Vocalcom. Vocalcom.
Donc, il n'y a pas de système cloud, personne n'a de système.
Si, il y a des systèmes, évidemment.
Certains
client fonctionne en place. Donc c'est un CRM, c'est un système qui est son serveur interne. L'agent se connecte directement sur son interface et tout ce qui est accès admin et tout ça se fait au niveau du client lui-même. Je parle de l'outsourcing.
Je parle de la téléphonie en elle-même.
S'il vous plaît. En fait, pourquoi c'est pas très développé en cloud par rapport à la téléphonie, c'est juste un problème d'opérateur. Parce qu'en fait, il y a juste 2 opérateurs IP. Et du coup, pratiquement tous les centres d'appel sont sur l'analogique. Soit des lignes RTC ou bien des I1, des lignes. Et en fait, on est obligé d'avoir un équipement sur place pour faire rentrer ces lignes-là physiquement.
Et votre préférence serait de d'avoir quoi?
Chaque client.
C'est multi-canal.
Quality monitoring, c'est comment on gère la qualité du service qu'on rend. Ça peut être des systèmes d'enregistrement, etc.
Un service.
Ça peut être l'écoute en instantané. C'est un contrôle qui est fait systématiquement et instantanément à longueur de jour.
Les deux. Comment on peut avoir les deux?
C'est les deux. Après, il y a des enregistrements qui sont derrière pour la traçabilité.
Et comment en général vous procédez? Est-ce que vous écoutez chaque appel? Est-ce que vous prenez l'échantillon?
Généralement, c'est les nouvelles recrues. Par rapport aux nouvelles recrues, l'essentiel.
Est-ce que
Pour notre call center, nous avons un service appelé service contrôle de qualité qui s'attache. Sa mission principale, c'est le contrôle quotidien en continuité des duplicates, la faisabilité du planning. Donc, il a des tâches sur l'aspect qualité. Après, il y a des superviseurs qui font ce qu'on appelle duplicate. Donc, en quelque sorte, le service de qualité aide les superviseurs sur le contrôle de qualité à améliorer la qualité de service. Donc, c'est eux qui contrôlent, ils voient le métier des conseillers. Après, la note sera envoyée au superviseur pour qu'il puisse les renvoyer au téléconseiller et finalement pour faire les actions.
l'accès aux enregistrements, c'est technique aux enregistrements. Est-ce que c'est un accès facile? Est-ce que c'est
c'est
réservé à la personne qui s'occupe de
Sur la même solution.
Sur la même solution.
C'est le workforce management, c'est plus dans le planning des ressources en fonction de la demande et du forecasting. Donc vous avez des systèmes particuliers, vous utilisez des logiciels particuliers.
C'est l'analyse en fait du reporting, c'est ça qui permet de projeter des
planifications. Vous avez des spreadsheets sur Excel ou est-ce que vous avez des logiciels pour...
Alors, oui, en fait, le logiciel lui-même génère des statistiques et des chiffres des rapports que nous devons analyser, lire et tirer des conclusions.
Mais non. Manuellement.
Oui, après le planning, oui.
Vous parlez de la méthode, c'est-à-dire directement extraire les données, d'avoir un planning automatique.
Sur la base de cette, non.
Moi, j'imagine que n'importe quelle solution qui fournit la téléphonie dispose d'un outil qui développe, qui récolte des rapports automatiquement prédéfinis. Après, il y a des rapports liés au métier. C'est hors solution. Donc, c'est par rapport aux objectifs de call center. Donc, par rapport à notre centre d'appel, il y a des statistiques qu'on les ramène depuis la solution et il y a d'autres statistiques qu'on les produit nous-mêmes par rapport à nos objectifs métiers. Voilà.
Vous n'avez pas de logiciel où, par exemple, vous avez historique,
oui.
Vous avez vos ressources, oui. Vous avez vos objectifs, et le logiciel lui-même va...
Non. On va arriver à
En parlant de contrôle qualité, si on avait un système qui devait automatiser tout le process dont on parlait, justement les reportings, si ça devait se faire automatiquement, à mon avis, pour la plupart des superviseurs en centre d'appel, C'est bien qu'il y ait un facteur humain pour revoir. Parce qu'on fait un travail quand même assez humain. Donc,
sur le contrôle de la qualité, je suis d'accord. Dans le workforce plan, workforce management, des méthodes d'optimisation des ressources. Je ne dis pas que ce serait parfait, mais il y a des logiciels qui permettent l'optimisation des ressources.
de quelles ressources?
Oui. C'est quoi la question? Si on a forecasting and workforce management, business control data, based on historical data, resources, and objective KPI.
Yes. So mainly, so what was the question again? Just, I'm trying to kind of...
C'est sa question que je n'ai pas compris.
Okay. Pour les pour ces scheduling, forecasting, vous utilisez data historical?
Oui.
Okay. Yeah, historical data.
Et après, c'est fait manuellement, ce n'est pas automatisé. C'est pas automatisé.
C'est pas automatisé. Du téléphonie, je ne parle pas avec le scheduling software.
Non, sur le planifier le nombre d'agents, the number of people that we should have on production is not quantified automatically. So we have to make our own conclusions when we are studying the statistics and we decide how many people we will need this week or at that period of...
Do you have a software or do you use Excel or... Excel.
En fait, chaque entreprise développe leur propre tableau de bord qui nous permettent de quantifier nos moyens, etc. et de faire un prévisionnel sur l'objectif.
Donc on prend les données, nous avons une base de données, on prend les données selon le reporting.
Mais il y a des softwares qui font tout ça.
Oui, c'est vrai qu'on n'est pas arrivé à ce
Parce que je vais parler demain de ce sujet, mais parce que le risque, si vous avez un call center qui a plus de 100 personnes, même 50 à 100, quand tu fais le calcul arithmétique, tu ne fais pas Erlang, unless tu utilises la théorie de queuing theory. Donc il y a une formule qu'il faut faire pour bien calculer. Sinon, tu vas avoir des problèmes, tu fais le calcul, tu penses que tu as besoin de 100 et tu as besoin de 110. Et tu te dis, qu'est-ce qui se passe? Tout est bien calculé. Non, c'est la formule, si tu utilises la formule juste combien d'heures, combien de tu fais un calcul, c'est...
Et d'ailleurs, c'est l'un des problèmes majeurs qui se posent dans les équipes de managers.
Je connais.
C'est le plus important. À chaque début du mois, on se dit qu'on a besoin de 30 agents supplémentaires et finalement c'est 40, c'est peut-être moins.
J'en parle demain.
Bon, web servers aussi, CRM applications. Donc vous avez, c'est quoi comme système que vous avez?
Nous, on a...
Oracle.
Il y a aussi des fois il y a des banques qui l'ont, mais qui n'ont pas été encore exploité. Parce que généralement, les banques publiques ont récemment migré vers un nouveau système d'information. Et ils ont fait la base, mais pas encore arrivé à ce stade de connecter le CRM. Voilà, pas encore.
Très important dans les banques.
Oui.
Et donc, qu'est-ce qui est important de recevoir un mail, ils vont directement au système?
Tout à fait, de basculer.
Il n'y a pas de CRM, ils vont directement.
Donc ils ont plusieurs canaux. Au lieu d'avoir un seul canal, un appel que vous détectez, avec qui vous pouvez chatter. Et donc vous avez le chat seul, comme vous avez dit tout à l'heure. Les canaux sont... Voilà, ils sont tout à fait.
Il n'y a pas de liaison 360.
Tout à fait. Voilà.
Donc ils ont plusieurs fenêtres ouvertes.
Exactement. Et on attend le client parce qu'il se manifeste. Et non pas, voilà. C'est lui qui choisit le canal en fait. C'est ça le...
Les agents, ils ont 2 écrans.
Comment? Non. Un seul écran. Voilà.
Il y a aussi des solutions open source qui sont utilisées, c'est vrai, avec des rapports basiques, pas beaucoup de détails. Voilà, pas beaucoup de détails, mais qui servent pour certaines missions, pour certaines opérations de petite dimension, donc qu'on utilise en cloud d'ailleurs.
Est-ce que c'est
Ça, je vois que c'est intelligent.
La boîte vocale.
C'est-à-dire on avait lancé le centre d'appel avec l'IBR en même temps. C'est bon maintenant, c'est vrai que les gens, le comportement clientèle préfère le SMS au lieu du téléphone. Donc on a fait un petit peu entre le lancement de l'IBR, donc c'est le SBI, c'est le serveur vocal. Voilà, en Algérie c'est le SBI. On a vu que les gens préfèrent recevoir tel jour leur solde par SMS au lieu d'appeler et consulter leur solde.
Okay, makes sense. Push information.
Exact.
Ça, c'est le prestataire. C'est compliance, des fois c'est the regulation from the banks, so it's good information to have. C'est pas data, mais it's information to tell you what to do. Qu'est-ce que tu peux faire et tu peux pas faire.
Time tracking des agents, c'est-à-dire comment est-ce que vous... Comment?
Le temps,
C'est le temps.
le temps de travail.
Quand ils se connectent.
Le temps de pause, le temps. C'est ça.
Vous avez des systèmes.
C'est la solution qui permet ça.
C'est généré automatiquement sur les reportings.
Ok, donc c'est téléphonique.
C'est sur les reportings avec
C'est téléphonique dans ANPT.
C'est dans la solution vocale, pas dans les formes de login.
Est-ce que vous faites d'autres canaux de communication, channels comme chat, faire des
Web callback sur le site, du web callback.
Et donc, le chat par exemple, comment est-ce que vous...
En fait, ce qu'on fait, à notre niveau, je parle pour Deluxe, on a sur notre solution la possibilité d'envoyer un mail ou un SMS sur MS directement.
Quelqu'un est en train d'envoyer un mail pour répondre à un mail. Est-ce que vous recevez des mails?
C'est des mails standardisés. On les envoie dans des cas bien particuliers où on a une personne en appel qui demande.
Par exemple, c'est des formulaires que le client remplit pour demander une information ou devenir client et il laisse son numéro de téléphone et à nous de le rappeler. Donc c'est des agents.
Après c'est différent.
À notre
niveau, c'est
du web callback.
Le temps qu'il passe à lire le email par exemple, est-ce que vous savez combien de temps?
Ah oui, bien sûr, il y a la date de réception, mais le problème c'est que le call finit à 21h, au-delà de 21h, il faut attendre le lendemain pour prendre les réponses.
Le temps de lire un email.
Le temps de lire l'agent quand il lit l'email.
On a le temps de répondre. Le temps de répondre, le temps de répondre et comprendre.
Ces deux canaux, on ne peut pas calculer. Il n'y a pas de système qui calcule le temps de la réception, de l'ouverture de l'email et de la réponse. C'est deux systèmes différents.
C'est le temps moyen de traitement.
Exactement, c'est un management en interne.
Avec la solution. Avec la solution, on peut avoir le temps moyen de traitement d'un mail. Par contre, on n'a pas, par exemple, ce détail, le temps de lecture. Ça, on l'a passé. C'est une moyenne de traitement avec ouvrir le mail, traiter le mail et répondre, jusqu'à répondre.
Knowledge management.
C'est les processing procedures, training, information, toute l'information pour le processus, comment répondre aux questions. C'est script.
Script, c'est le script.
Script.
Vous avez des systèmes pour gérer
Système, or is it?
Système pour gérer ça?
Il y a des systèmes.
Ça peut être des systèmes très simples, genre un wiki. Ça peut être des systèmes plus complexes où il y a de l'intelligence artificielle qui est. Par exemple, vous tapez des mots-clés. S'il y a un problème, vous tapez des mots-clés et vous avez des solutions.
J'ai déjà travaillé avec ça, mais pas actuellement. C'est la foire aux questions, par exemple. C'est ce qu'on appelle la foire aux questions, où on met juste un mot-clé et on a c'est-à-dire une réponse standard qu'on peut donner au client à ce type de problème. Par exemple, moi j'ai eu affaire à ça à l'automobile. Par exemple, ma voiture ne fonctionne pas pour tel. tel souci technique, donc je mets le souci technique, j'ai tout le détail de ce souci et comment le client peut, s'il peut bien sûr.
Et puis des arbres
Exactement.
Après, on peut avoir le même script qui est généralement utilisé sur papier pour l'instant, pour être honnête. On fait les formations, on fait du coaching jusqu'à ce que la personne qui va répondre aux appels soit vraiment prête à répondre à toutes les attentes de la personne au bout du fil. Et ce qu'on peut rajouter éventuellement, c'est de mettre le même script sur l'écran. Je pense que ça a été déjà fait sur LMS par exemple. Oui, le même script, juste en tapant un mot.
Par exemple, nous, à notre niveau, nous avons développé une interface où nous avons mis tous les scripts et tous les produits pour éviter à ce que le conseiller ouvre un petit peu toutes les fenêtres. Mais je pense qu'au fur et à mesure, le conseiller répond rapidement à la question.
Donc même pour nous, on a une solution qui permet de ce qu'on appelle insérer un inventaire. Insérer un inventaire, il est compris dans la solution. Donc dès que le téléconseiller il est face à une question, il insère juste, c'est-à-dire ceci, et il trouve directement la réponse qu'il peut répondre au client. Et on peut l'enrichir au fur et à mesure cet inventaire.
Okay. Est-ce que vous arrivez à évaluer le taux de succès de ces systèmes?
Si je peux rajouter quelque chose, c'est beaucoup plus simple dans le cas de la réception d'appel. Mais quand on fait de la conquête, de l'émission d'appel, je vous donne un exemple. Moi, je suis là, j'ai mon casque, j'appelle une personne que je ne connais pas, qui n'a rien demandé, qui n'est pas mon client, qui est juste un potentiel prospect.
Il subit là.
Et parfois, oui, j'ai un accord, que ce soit pour de la télévente ou pour autre chose. J'ai un accord, j'ai une personne qui est avec moi, qui est réceptive, qui m'écoute. Je lui demande, par exemple, dans notre cas, on fait de la récolte de dons pour des associations. J'ai une personne qui est d'accord pour faire un don. Écoutez, je vous donne 50 €, d'accord, très bien. Donc, je propose l'alternative la plus facile, c'est de le faire directement parce qu'on a aussi des terminals de paiement en ligne. Qui, en fait, c'est les comptes bancaires des associations qui sont directement reliés. Donc, juste en prenant le numéro de la carte, enfin le RIB proposé en face, je peux effectuer le paiement directement. Par exemple, des fois, j'ai des vieilles personnes, vieilles à la retraite, dès que je lui dis des cartes bancaires, ça lui fait peur. Donc, je lui propose d'aller sur le site internet. Madame, prenez votre ordinateur, je vais vous guider. Ça nous est arrivé de rester 50 minutes avec un vieux au téléphone à lui expliquer comment effectuer un paiement sur internet. Et ça, encore une fois, ça fait partie de la formation, du coaching, d'avoir la patience de guider quelqu'un qui n'a jamais utilisé un ordinateur pour qu'il mette ses coordonnées bancaires, de le mettre en confiance. Des fois, on passe 45 minutes, il a envie de raccrocher, il faut avoir les bons mots pour le rassurer, même si ça fait 1 heure que ça dure. Et tout ça, ça rentre encore une fois dans la notion de service.
Concernant le knowledge management, moi je pense que ça devait faut apprendre. Moi j'ai commencé chez Procter & Gamble en tant que commercial. On a appris c'est-à-dire comment réaliser une opération du compte. Il faut passer par 7 étapes. C'est ça, je pense.
Oui, c'est
en parallèle, il y a ce qu'on appelle résoudre des problèmes, c'est-à-dire par élimination. Quels sont les problèmes? Le client, c'est-à-dire, va dire voilà 4. Donc, vous répondre quel est le problème le plus grave. Donc, par élimination, vous éliminez les autres et commencez à négocier uniquement par un seul problème. Donc,
c'est ça, c'est des outils qui aident à accélérer la résolution.
Donc, il faut apprendre, non? Le knowledge management.
Non, c'est des outils. C'est un système. C'est un système informatique qui va vous aider à accélérer la résolution des problèmes.
Par exemple, dans le cas que vous avez suggéré ici, si vous avez un effectif de 200 personnes, et ce cas arrive 3 à 4%, on ne va pas faire tous les associés apprendre, comme on dit, quand il y a un problème comme ça, on dit ok, you don't have a card, tu n'as pas une carte, je vais t'aider avec ton ordinateur, mais j'ai Abdou ici qui est très voilà, et on fait un petit routage, warm transfer, c'est comme ça. Et puis si on n'a pas ça, si vous avez un très bon knowledge management, then il peut vous guider. Étape par étape, comme vous avez dit, étape par étape. Mais c'est pas juste lire Mais c'est plus guidé, en fait.
C'est en général des systèmes assez vieux en termes de concept, basés sur des principes d'intelligence artificielle, des systèmes experts, des systèmes de réseau de neurones, qui sont assez intelligents pour trouver des solutions assez rapidement. Il y a des systèmes beaucoup plus simples. J'ai parlé des wikis. C'est le même principe que Wikipédia. C'est des trucs, des recherches, ils vont.
Quand j'étais en MetLife, on a utilisé ce système quand on a fait le training des employés et quand ils commencent à prendre les appels. Quelqu'un qui a pris les appels 2 ans, 3 ans, donc il n'a même pas besoin de partir. S'il y a quelque chose de nouveau, ils vont partir. Mais pour les nouveaux employés, donc ce qu'on a fait, c'est quand ils rentrent dans un screen, dans un écran, et touchent une partie de l'écran, on sait qu'il fait ça. Donc on lui donne le knowledge, right there. On lui dit, oh, c'était presque artificial intelligence, on lui donne et on avait une résolution de presque 80% qu'on était correct. Et puis si c'était incorrect, donc il just close it. Il ferme.
C'est comme quand on utilise un téléphone pour la première fois.
Voilà. Donc ça, c'est knowledge management could be very
des
powerful.
suggestions qu'on reçoit.
Voilà. Ça va être très, very powerful in training, in first call resolution. Sorry, my French is not as good as mine.
Finalement, les rapports, mais vous avez des systèmes. Comment est-ce que vous faites vos rapports?
Pardon?
Vous avez toutes ces données. Vous essayez d'avoir de l'information à partir de ces données. Donc, comment est-ce que vous récoltez, vous les rassemblez et puis vous les présentez?
En fait, il y a un module dans CRM Localcom qui fait un croisement de données. En fait, des requêtes SQL, des jointures entre les tables qui nous permettent d'avoir des statistiques de production, etc.
Aussi bien de...
C'est uniquement des données qui sont en relation avec les appels.
Bien sûr. Les appels, les pauses, etc. Les chiffres, etc.
Mais uniquement tout ce qui est... Le prochain truc, c'est ce que j'appelle ideal scénario, c'est des trucs plus conceptuels en ce moment. Donc, ideal scénario, c'est d'avoir un système qui a toutes les fonctions d'un call center. Quand je parle de toutes les fonctions, c'est toutes les fonctions qu'on a vues et toutes les plus.
Sur un seul système.
Sur un seul système.
C'est comme un ERP.
Comment? C'est comme un, conceptuellement, mais c'est comme un ERP. On a toutes ces fonctions qui sont intégrées dans ce système, une base de données, et ça permet de centraliser toutes les données. C'est quelque chose. Ça nous donne une holistic view, c'est-à-dire une vue globale de toutes ces données. Et il y a plein d'avantages. On peut faire ce qu'on appelle le reporting. On peut tirer des informations. Un truc très simple, par exemple, d'un point de vue de si on veut par exemple étudier la profitabilité d'un client, par exemple, si on est un sous-traitant. Le genre d'information dont on a besoin, c'est par exemple les coûts. Si je regarde ça très simple, les coûts et ce qu'on génère comme revenu. Donc cette information, elle peut venir des systèmes de comptabilité. Là, les coûts peuvent venir des systèmes de téléphonie. On sait qui a passé combien de temps sur les appels. On a le système de paie, on sait combien ces agents, combien on paye ces agents. On a les coûts qu'on appelle les transports, la location. Et après, on peut générer en instantané des rapports qui peuvent vous donner cette information. Donc, et ça permet de voir. Donc, c'est juste un exemple pour vous expliquer qu'est-ce qu'on peut faire avec un système centralisé où toutes les données sont dans une seule base de données.
In where the end result would be, or middle result would be something like this. So how is there a more generic approach to you have a very rough idea of your clientele, but is there something generic where she can actually build up questions or surveys or whatever to allow her to reach something like that? This is already downstream. She wants to go upstream, something that should help her depending on these. Is that okay, ça? Views on. C'est ça?
So, I mean, this is a really good question, and this is probably where we get into a little bit of the beginning part where I said you start out with anecdotal knowledge. So you get with what you know at the beginning, and you probably are going to miss a little, but if you remember earlier we talked about failing fast and then recovering fast. Okay, so there may be some things that you start out with that you implement that don't go as planned, right? Because you're only dealing with anecdotal evidence at first. So in what I meant before, I wasn't saying specific to banking or specific to insurance, whatever. I was just using those as examples. Okay, so I didn't mean to be specific on those. So those are just examples, and I was trying to get at the difference between how I was defining what a client is versus a customer in terms of how I'm using those terms today, just so that maybe we can get some clarity there, but I might have added some confusion instead. So when you first start, one, if you can find data that you can possibly purchase. Okay, if you are starting at ground zero, or you don't have you don't have any data that you can draw from, then you may have to buy that data. Otherwise, you have to start with your own knowledge that you and your team have just from your experience, because there's no data there to pull from, right? So, but over time, as you implement your different technologies and you grow and so forth and get into different clients, that data will start being there. Okay, I look at this the same way that we get web analytics. Okay, so when we first create a website, if it's a brand new website for a client, it's a new business, there's no analytics there. If this client wanted to spend $20,000 a month on Google Ads, at the beginning, we have very little to go by other than data that we can get from other campaigns that competitors of theirs have run. So that's like you looking at your competitors and seeing what they've done. But other than that, we have no data to go by. So there's I would put it this way: there's an art and a science to this. Okay, so it isn't even when you have as much data as you would like to have, there's still an art to it, because every company is going to be different to some extent. Your solutions are going to be different than everybody else's solutions who is attending this conference, because even your goals are going to be different with where you want to go and how you want to build the company and so forth. You may have some other companies here that they're a lot, you may have a really, really high value on customer experience, and other companies don't necessarily. I mean, we have customers who spend money on usability, so we'll go through, we'll do usability studies, we'll do research before we begin designing a website, we'll do research as we design the website, and we'll make iterative changes based on that research. And we have other companies who come to us and just say, no, just build it. And then if it doesn't do what they want it to do, then they either come back to us and say, well, why'd you build it that way? Or, hey, it was, we're the ones who told you to build it that way, and we didn't give you the budget for usability studies. So you can't, there is a gap at the beginning. I mean, even when I started my business, there were a lot of assumptions that I had to make. A lot. And some of those assumptions panned out, and some of them didn't. Now, if you have a group of people, so I don't know how big of a company you're talking about, with where you work, but if you have a group of 20 people who are leaders in the company, or 5 people, then you have a lot of knowledge there that you can use to start making, again, if the computers that we have today didn't start because somebody had an idea and 10 days later they built a computer. They started with a very, very small idea that was then tested, that was then failed and tested and failed and tested and failed and tested, and then built over time into what we have today and will continue to build, obviously. So, and I don't want you to think that I'm trying to sort of weasel my way or talk around your question. I'm not. Your question is probably one of the age-old questions out there. How do you scale up and bring in any kind of technology into any company and make it successful, right? So it's a great question. It's not one that there's an easy answer to, though. So, and that's why at the beginning when I said you can look at data, you can pull data in that's either anecdotal or
Je veux pas savoir quelle technologie utiliser dans une entreprise. Je veux pas, excusez-moi, et là je ne reposerai pas votre question parce que là ça va prendre un peu de temps, on va rester ici. Je ne veux pas choisir, je veux pas que vous nous montriez quelle est la solution qu'on doit choisir. Mais comment vous nous montriez comment savoir choisir. Aujourd'hui, je suis dans mon entreprise, demain, je serai dans une autre entreprise. Je veux avoir les éléments qui m'aident à la prise de bonnes décisions pour le bon choix d'une solution. Aujourd'hui, vous me montrez, vous me dites qu'il vous faut cette solution et il vous faut cette solution. Comment vous avez fait pour savoir qu'il me faut cette solution? Avec du vécu, avec mon propre vécu, je peux me prononcer avec quelques petites expériences à savoir choisir les solutions. Mais je ne suis pas encore à un stade avancé pour dire que je suis expert. Aujourd'hui, vous êtes expert et j'aimerais profiter de votre expérience pour avoir les bases de choisir. Je ne demande pas qu'on choisisse pour moi. Montrez-moi comment le faire. Pas, ne le faites pas pour moi. D'accord?
So, and my goal wasn't to say that I can't choose for you. I know I can't do that. We all know I can't do that. What I'm saying is so in terms of, let me put this in my phone again here. In terms of choosing what solutions are right for you, what I'm saying is this is one of the first steps that you can use in that, creating personas and then creating customer journey maps. And the reason, and again, this right here may have all kinds of data behind it to support this. But if you don't have that data, then, now are you asking how do we even get this? Is that part of what you're asking? How do we even get the data that builds all of this? Or are you saying, is there something that comes before this?
Comment vous avez su que c'est ce qu'il vous faut?
Oh, okay, okay. That's actually easier to answer. And I'm sorry if I missed that this whole time.
I am sorry.
So personas are, in the field of psychology, personas are a very, they've been used for probably at least 40 years, somewhere around there, as a basis for making all kinds of different decisions in business. That sounds really generic, but that's the case. That's why I started giving the example of the healthcare industry with our client who we built personas for them to help us figure out how to set up the navigation in the website that we were redesigning for them. Okay? So when you look in the field of psychology, so first of all, let me take a step back. You have to figure out how to know, you have to understand your customer. That's step one. Okay? In order to serve your customer, you have to know who they are, what they need, what they like, and how you are going to then meet those needs comes next. So the very first thing is know your customer. Once you know your customer, then you can start figuring out what technology makes sense to use for them. Okay? Personas is one of the tools that we use to learn to get to know your customer.